Welcome to the CX Sessions from the Customer Experience Innovation Institute. Every episode, we provide an innovative perspective on customer experience from the people who are changing your world, one experience at a time.
Welcome back to CX Sessions. I'm your host, Simon Chris, from Melbourne in Australia, and this is a very special episode today. I'm with Michael Dhillon, winemaker extraordinaire, and we're going to talk about customer experience in the wine industry. So, Michael, welcome to the CX Sessions.
Thanks for having me talk to you, Simon.
No problem at all. As I do with all Australian guests, I want to start off by recognising the traditional custodians of the land on which we work, rest and play, and acknowledge their elders, both past and present. Michael, I just want to kind of kick off. You won Winemaker of the Year last year, is that correct?
Yeah, 2022 Winemaker of the Year for James Halliday's publication, Wine Companion. Yes.
Okay, for those listeners that are outside of Australia, the James Halliday Companion is the go-to document for the industry. And so for Michael to take out that prestigious award of Winemaker of the Year is pretty stunning given the size of the Australian industry. So congratulations on that one.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little about what customer experience means in the wine industry. I mean, as a wine drinker, and by the way, people, if you have never tried any of Bindi wines, that's B-I-N-D-I, they are absolutely stunning. As a wine drinker, one of the big parts of customer experience for me is in the glass, right? The end product. How else do you kind of see customer experience?
Yeah, of course, we're totally conscious that the wine has to do the talking ultimately in the glass on the table after people have bought it in a restaurant or they've had it in their cellar for many years. That is the ultimate test. But wine is much more layered than that. Any experience is always more than just the product itself. And for us, there's the importance of the history, there's the connections, the relationships, and all of those things come to bear in different ways for different people. So we're very aware that not everybody has the same experience with one of our wines. The wine might be the same, but they are adopting different parts of our history and our culture that they might have heard in various channels to the wine when they have it. And that's perfectly fine. You know, we all do things in life when we go to our favourite restaurant or we go and see a sporting team or whatever. We carry the emotional baggage and we embed that into the experience with the product. And we're very conscious that when people experience our wine, they're not just tasting wine.
And what about the other elements? I mean, there's a lot of talk that a lot of people buy wine based on the colour of the label in the shop or something. Is that something that you kind of experience?
Well, that is a very true thing. Many years ago, I remember talking to a larger wine producer, and we're not a large wine producer, we're a niche producer, and they were saying, you have to have yellow and reds in your label and some gold around it and so forth, and it needs to stand out on the shelf. And that makes complete sense when that's the type of wine you're producing and that's the type of wine producer you are. I remember thinking at that point, well, that's not who we are. And when we came 18 years ago to rework our labels somewhat with the man who does our labels, Ken Cato, who's a fantastic brand image manager, he said to us, what are you trying to achieve? And I said, well, I don't want anybody ever to buy a bottle of Bindi wine because of the label. I want them to understand other things. The label has to support quality, niche, prestige, longevity, all of those subtle things that we want to be spoken through our label. But it was super important for us to think that there are other things, more important things than the superficiality of label that drive the purchase decision and the appreciation of the wine.
Yeah, interesting. Because you would think that the label might drive the initial purchase and then those other things that you're talking about would drive subsequent purchases. So you've got to dance between attraction and retention.
And for us, our dance doesn't involve attracting with the label. We'd like to say it's a confidence that there are enough people out there that know our wine. There are enough people out there that will recommend our wine, support our wine, be ambassadors for our wine. One sitting right next to me. And it's been, part of our slow burn. So, we're a winery that's been going for 35 years. And I feel that when we're 50 years old, we're a mature business, mature brand. And that means that we've cycled through multiple eras of the economy, multiple eras of family generation, of customer longevity, and that proves success. And when you've done that, like Cullens or Mosswood or Mount Mary, Yarra Yering, you've built something that only comes with time. And you've put all those relationships out there, all those subtle strengths and definitions that are really important for people's feeling towards wine.
That's an interesting complexity that you add about time. I mean, your whole business is time-bound.
Time.
How long does the wine sit in these beautiful barrels sleeping? And we should be talking quietly because the wine is sleeping. But how long does it sit in the barrels and sleep? And then this whole, 50 years, there's a lot of businesses that don't last 50 years or aren't designed to be 50 years. And yet in the background, you've still got all of the normal elements of customer experience, like customer trust and customer, that people want to trust the brand and work with the brand. In your business, though, and I know you don't have a cellar door, so you're one of the few wineries that don't do that, and that's probably wise, gives you back your Saturdays and Sundays. But where you don't have a cellar door, you're relying on other people to sell your wines, right? And I know your wines are sold in Hong Kong, London, New York, kind of around the world. With such a geographical spread and so many other players involved, how do you kind of make sure that the person in the wine shop in London knows how to represent your wine, knows how to talk about your wine?
So very instinctively for us, and we've spent now 3.5 decades doing it, that we've wanted to tell the story to the right people about all the things that we have to get right to be a successful small vineyard winery. So we've got land, precious land, and the Gunner and Willumbullock people of this area, part of the Wurundjeri group, own this land, manage this land for 30,000 years, and we get to farm that with vineyards now, but an open land that they managed. So we talk about the land, and people are interested in the land. People like the idea of the land being precious. And then we talk about vines, and we grow Chardonnay and Pinot. They have a history in Burgundy. They've been propagated here to create very specific types of table wine in this climate. And again, people are interested in how that came about and why those vines are interesting in this climate. And we talk about winemaking and the mentors that we've had and our experiences. And I've spent a lot of time working overseas. And again, that's engaging for people. And then we've been conscious with the marketing side of that to tell that story, to do that directly with people traveling around the world, to host journalists here, to have sommeliers, wine shop proprietors here, to go to those people overseas and engage with them or interstate. So we've done all that. So that's helped that fourth leg of the marketing. And then we've been really conscious to run a good business. Like I talked about a 50-year context, and we've been conscious that every year the business has to stack up, that we work in 5-year blocks. So some might not be profitable necessarily, but others will be, and we work in blocks of 5. And we tie all that in together, and we try and articulate that to people so they go, okay, these people respect land, viticulture, winemaking, market engagement, and have a business sensibility. And that garners respect. And then we try and be nice people. We try and genuinely care and engage with people and have fun. Wine has got to be fun. If there's no product, if there's a product out there, it's got to be fun. It's got to be wine, right? Yeah. If you can't have fun with wine, what are you doing? And we try and embed all those things together and communicate that.
Oh, Michael, I've got to say, you and your wife, Wendy, are always the most amazing hosts when I come out here, which is as often as I can. You mentioned a couple of things there. When you're at, say, a wine dinner where you might be presenting your wines and talking to the public rather than to the sommeliers, do you find that people engage more in the story of the 35 years and the story of the land, or do they engage more in we have this and this clone of Pinot, we've planted on this angle with this, line up with this? What do people engage more with?
Different people engage more with different aspects, obviously. I did a couple of things recently. With about 50 people involved, with 5 hours at the table eating and drinking some great wine. And I think the split was probably about a quarter of people were really interested in the detail of the activities. And then about 3/4 were much more interested in the stories of family, history, land, philosophy, and so forth. But that's not to say they're mutually exclusive. it's more a percentage biased one way or the other. And there's no doubt in wine that at a starting point is the quality of the wine. And that does come back to the clones of the varieties and the winemaking technique and the yeast and the barrel type and all these things. That's very important because that forms the wine. But that's just a starting point. And I think when you come to a 35-year history and the wine quality is almost a given, that people expect a standard, then they want more. It's like, okay, I believe, it's like when you get a car, I believe the car's going to be roadworthy, it's going to be safe, it's going to get the distance and so forth. And then you go, well, what are the other things that I'm going to enjoy with the car? It's not just the fundamentals. I want to enjoy more aspects. And I think wine is like that.
Okay. And if somebody was trying your wine for the first time, what's that 1 or 2 minute thing that you would want them to know as they're opening their very first bottle of Bindi?
Oh, that it comes from somewhere very specific. Like it comes from a piece of land that you can be shown. You can walk onto the land and see where it is. And even if you don't get that experience, that's the truth. That's where it comes from, and that it was grown and made with care.
Perfect. And I have to say, I do know this land. I have walked it quite a bit.
Many times, yeah.
And the variety that occurs because of where on the block it's planted and the style in which you planted it is I always find that absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
To taste the difference between the Block 5, the Block 8, the Dachshund, they are so different. Shifting gears a little to kind of a modernisation future focus, a lot of the CX industry is now in a huge upheaval because of what happened during COVID. And also just, everything on every news channel today is about AI. What are the things that are really affecting the wine industry today? I'm kind of making an assumption that AI isn't one of them, but I could be wrong.
Not for us, but I'm open-minded. I think there's a whole lot of things going on that we don't know yet, that we're going to be led to. There's no doubt the fundamentals of wine remain in that the glass has to be delicious and the truth of the stories should be there. But that said, what we take for granted with wine is that it's fermented sugars in that fruit that produce alcohol. And one of the underpinnings of wine is that it's an alcoholic beverage. And I think that is getting turned. I think technology, market expectation, whether it's health or not for me to argue, but there'll be a big push for de-alcoholized wine, or even wine that has a moderate level of alcohol to a point rather than being 12 or 14%. People might say, well, I'm prepared to drink wine, but I only want it to be 5%. So I think technology, market learnings will come, and we all need to be open-minded. That said, I think there would always be a role for traditional wine, but someone probably said that about Kodak as well.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, and Blackberry. Yeah, they all went.
Yeah.
That too, I imagine, would happen in the vineyard, right? So the one thing I do know about the vineyards is that it is essentially agricultural science, right? Yeah. So much the same as the wheat growers, the barley growers. Ultimately, you're growing a product out of the ground, and so there's got to be new tech. I know you've got the funniest little skinny whiz-bang tractor I've ever seen in my life. What other tech is there like that's happening, in terms of measuring what's going on out there or changing what's going on out in the vineyard?
I think the advent of drones is profound. I know there are people using drones to survey over their vineyards to see what the foliage of plants are doing, and they're expressing their soil or their stresses in different ways. So there's an information gain from that. There's also the ability to spray. Instead, if you can't get a tractor on a vineyard which is damp and the soil is going to get compacted, you can spray
from a drone.
If you get the right drone. Bird deterrents. Instead of putting nets on, you can fly drones, and all these things have disadvantages, of course, but the technology is beginning and the applications are beginning. So there's a whole myriad of ways that are working there. The other one is autonomous tractors, and we're going to go electric tractors, of course. So we're still running traditional diesel tractors. Electric tractors are very close, and it makes sense when you've got a big farm shed to put up solar panels and just pump energy into your tractors.
Yeah, nice.
And then, of course, if you need to draw that into buildings and your tractor's not running, you've got big batteries set up there to power your buildings from your tractor. So I think that technology has a huge opportunity to help farmers like ourselves work better and work greener and cleaner. But I think autonomous is interesting because we spend a lot of time in tractors working in vineyards, which is not the most ergonomically fine thing to do for a human being. And if you can have the technology set up where the grid of the vineyard is known and you can just position tractors to work through that, whether it's ploughing, spraying, mowing, whatever, trimming vines, that's a big advantage.
Yeah, wow. And see, all of in my head, all of this plays into the customer experience because it plays into your story.
It sure does.
And customer experience is so many things to so many people, right down to when my box of Bindi wine arrives and I cut the tape open, how is it presented and how is it in the box? Is the box damaged? Customer experience goes out so far. Any other cool customer experience things that you're seeing competitors doing, other wines doing? For instance, is the concept of a cellar door changing, or is it archaic? Do people still go to cellar door?
Well, I think to start with, the customer experience always needs to be greater. Like, I think customers are increasingly demanding, and so they should be. Like, people know more stuff going on. People see more photos, they hear more sounds, they receive more media. Like,
they watch podcasts.
There's more, and this wasn't happening 20 years ago and 40 years ago. It's accelerated. So the human has the capacity to increasingly take on greater loads of information. People are inquisitive. Certainly our customers these days know so much more about who we are and what we do than they did 25 years ago. And that's not from necessarily visiting us. That's just from the dissemination of information and their hunger for whether it's social media, whether it is podcasts, whether it's reading journals online and so forth. So I think we all need to be really conscious about the information we're sharing. And I think people's radars are really good for what's nonsense and what's true.
Yeah.
And I think that's particularly true if you're a business, any business, from us wine, where there's a lot of depth to it, like it's a premium product. Premium products, people demand that knowledge and that transparency and respect. A flippant product that's very commercial, people are not. It's expedient and so forth. They're not delving deep. But at our level, people want to go deep, and I think we have to be receptive to that.
Yeah, okay, awesome. Well, there's 3 questions that I love to ask everyone that I have on the CX sessions. And the first one is, stepping outside of your business, stepping outside of the winery, just in general, what is a great customer experience for you, or have you had a great customer experience recently?
Yeah. For me, always is humanity.
Do you want to unpack that a bit?
Yeah. So for me, whether it's going to the supermarket and asking some advice from somebody, or going to the checkout, it's when someone looks you in the eye and you get a sense that there's a human being at home and they're happy, they're confident, they're willing to express that. I think for me, whether it's the supermarket or go to a restaurant, of course, I love that knowledge, engagement, that they care, that you care, and we can take that to do anywhere you want to go in society.
And can I explore that a bit then? Mm-hmm. If you were buying a product online, would you be okay with interacting with an AI-powered chatbot, or would you want a human? And where does that kind of breach over?
So to me, that sort of purchasing is all about expedience. It's not about enrichment. That interaction is not about fulfilling me as an emotional human being. It's about getting a product or a service delivered. So my expectation at that point is not that I want the humanity. It's when I engage in a human experience that I demand it. Otherwise, just it's about efficiency. Get it done.
So if you went to a restaurant, it wouldn't be okay to be served by a robot. But when you're doing something online, it is okay to be served by a robot.
I think so. But there's probably restaurants where it is okay to be served or have food delivered by a robot.
Sushi train.
Yeah, or we were in a restaurant in Melbourne where the food, there were certain spaces between tables and the food came out like a little Dalek or something, like a little machine that brought it out, and then your plate was there and you took it off.
Okay.
It sort of GPS'd around the restaurant. And I think in the right restaurant, that's okay. But in other restaurants where you want a particular type of service and humanity, that's not okay.
Okay. The second question is, what would you like to see companies doing more of in this space? What should they do more of?
Wow. I think in wineries, I think they should tell the story coherently all the way through. I think any business should do that. So again, for us, that's communicate. And I think any other winery, when I read about another winery, I want to know, what's your land like? How are you going in the vineyard? What exciting things do you do in the winery? What's your feeling about communicating with your customer? How do you feel about that? What's your consciousness about that? And I think that's really important in a wine sense. And I think you can translate that across to any other business. What are your fundamentals? And can we know about them?
Can you tell the story?
Can you tell the story?
Yeah, wow. And thirdly, I know you're a voracious reader and an unbelievable writer. I think if you weren't a winemaker, you'd be writing. What book are you reading right now? What's influencing you?
I'm reading a book called 1835, and I can't remember the name of the author, which is embarrassing. And it's a book about the founding of Melbourne. So it's basically the history of First Nations culture that begins, and that begins to get disrupted in 1788 in New South Wales, and then shortly after in Tasmania, then called Van Diemen's Land. And it's about how these people from Van Diemen's Land, Tasmania, came across to Melbourne and really began the huge land rush across Australia, which was unbelievably disruptive and travesty for our First Nations people. It talks about that, how for the first, say, 50 years of Australia in its form now was quite contained, and then this explosion beginning in Melbourne occurred, which makes me think deeply about the land where we are and the peoples who were here.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you so much. An odd question that nobody else that gets interviewed on CX Sessions is going to get, and it's kind of one of those, which is your favourite child? Of the vintages of wine that you've done, what has been your favourite vintage and why?
Oh, gee. I think 1994, it was the fourth crop of fruit that we'd had, and we produced a Pinot Noir, only 4 barrels, 1,200 bottles only.
Wow.
And we actually had a magnum with a group about 2 or 3 weeks ago of the 94 original Vineyard Pinot. And it was the first time we'd made a wine that we really went, oh, wow, that's like a really good wine. That's not just our wine and we're biased and we like it because it's ours and it's from our place. It was a wine that we knew was really good. And when we showed other people, they were like, oh, gosh, this is really something. And that was a huge point of pride and confidence for us. So 1994.
Yeah, fantastic. So once again, for those of you that are watching or listening, if you haven't tried Bindi Wines, Bindi, arguably Australia's, in my opinion, Australia's best Pinot, Australia's best Chardonnay. Get out there and find it. You will find it at some liquor outlets.
It's here and there.
It's here and there, exactly, because it is in demand. But Michael, thanks for taking the time today, and thanks for being a part of CX Sessions.
Pleasure, Simon. Lovely to join you.
Thanks.
That's it for this session. Let us know what you think or recommend someone for a future session at cxii.com.au. This podcast is brought to you by the Customer Experience Innovation Institute. Thanks for joining us, and tune in again soon to hear more CX Sessions.